Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, ministers and officials from around the world begin discussing latest innovations and new rules for IT technology in Korea's port city of Busan. The Korean government will work out details for dispatching medical workers to Ebola-hit countries amid signs in the U.S. and Spain the killer virus may have been successfully tackled. Plus, China's Communist Party kicks off the country's most important political meeting of the year as the world awaits Beijing's response to Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's new Monday, October 20th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this lunchtime, the wait is over. The International Telecommunications Union's quadrennial conference has just begun in Korea's southern city of Busan.
Aside from the meetings and discussions on ICT policies, other events are also in store for those of you intrigued by the latest state-of-the-art technologies. Arirang Song-jisan is standing by at Bexco, the very venue of this year's conference. So, Jisan, give us the details.
Good afternoon, guys. Now the Plenipotentiary has officially begun with the opening speech by the ITU Secretary General Tamada Toure, followed by President Park Geun-hye's remarks. Now, Connect 2020 is the vision for the ITU heading into this year's conference. It's a vision that highlights the role of information and communication technologies as a key enabler for social, economic, and environmentally sustainable growth and development. In her remarks, President Park reiterated her drive for a creative economy, saying the paradigm of the Korean economy must switch from follower to leader. She pointed out that the expansion of internet access could ironically worsen the digital divide and information gap, where the weak and less privileged cannot benefit like others, and the era of Internet of Things, where all objects are connected online, may threaten our privacy. She then called on the international community and member countries to boost cooperation through ICTs. Now, from this Monday, major issues on the agenda include plenary sessions and voting for council member countries and directors on the board committee. But bilateral and multilateral talks seeking cooperation in the ICT sector are also slated to be held throughout the three-week conference between some 3,000 delegates from the 193 member countries. Now, it comes as no surprise that Korea is seeking to seize this opportunity to promote its creative economy models and showcase its latest technologies. Korea's major telecom and handset makers will unveil their advanced 5G technologies, while small and mid-sized companies will be exhibiting their ideas and products at multiple expos running alongside the conference. This has been Song Ji-sun reporting live from Bexco, Busan.
And moving on, for the third time this month, the South and North Korean militaries were engaged in a shootout near their shared border over the weekend. All of it comes ahead of high-level talks that are set to take place either later this month or in early November. And while you might think the hostilities would put those talks in danger, experts here in Seoul say otherwise. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Another shootout across the inter-Korean border has further heightened military tensions on the Korean peninsula. On Sunday, the two Koreas traded fire after 10 North Korean soldiers were seen approaching the military demarcation line near the border city of Paju. This comes just 9 days after North Korea fired machine guns at South Korean balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang leaflets.
Provocations could be aimed at banning the controversial leaflets or at getting South Korea to be less forceful on the North Korean human rights issue at the United Nations on October 28th.
North Korea has yet to respond to South Korea's proposal to hold a second round of high-level talks next Thursday. Experts say the North may be attempting to set the agenda for the planned meeting through the series of shootouts.
North Korea seems to be escalating military tensions to protest South Korea's recent countermeasures and to build up a pretext for discussions on the rules of engagement in the West Sea and the DMZ.
North Korea is expected to seek discussions on preventing future clashes at the maritime border. ending cross-border slandering, and lifting South Korean sanctions. A key issue for South Korea will be holding reunions for war-separated families. As the two Koreas remain largely divided on what they hope to bring to the negotiating table, making progress in just one round of talks could be a challenge. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Pope Francis has sent a positive message regarding the situation on the Korean Peninsula, saying that from time to time families have their differences, but they're always open for reconciliation. The presidential office of Changwon told reporters Sunday that the Pope relayed his message to President Park Geun-hye last Friday during their meeting at the Vatican. The Pope added that he is keeping the two Koreas in his prayers and emphasized the need to pray for peace and unification. The meeting between Pope Francis and President Park came just 2 months after the Pope made a historic visit to South Korea.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's top security advisor is due to visit Seoul this week for talks with Korea's presidential security advisor Kim Kwan-jin. The presidential office of Chongwade in Seoul says the head of Tokyo's National Security Council, Shotaro Yachi, is coming for a 2-day trip starting on Tuesday. When the two advisors meet, they will hold strategic talks on security issues concerning the Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and they'll also exchange views on issues that are of interest to both Seoul and Tokyo. Yachi is also expected to explain Tokyo's security policies, especially a recent interim report to revise its defense guidelines with Washington, a likely response to China's military expansion in the region. Now, Korea will soon announce how it plans to help in the global fight against Ebola. Officials will fine-tune the details of dispatching a small medical team to 2 of the hardest-hit countries in West Africa. Now, the death toll from this latest outbreak continues to rise gradually, but there may be some hope on the horizon after some positive developments in Europe and the US. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The Foreign Ministry and related government agencies will meet this Monday to discuss how Korea is going to support global efforts to tackle Ebola. This follows President Park Geun-hye's decision last week to send a medical support team to Sierra Leone and Liberia. An official says the timing of the dispatch and number of workers to be sent will be discussed. Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is calling on the international community to help her country in the fight against the disease. She says efforts require a commitment from every nation that has the capacity to help, stressing that Ebola respects no borders. The worldwide death toll has surpassed 4,500, but there have been some positive developments. A Spanish nurse who was the first person to contract Ebola outside of West Africa has now tested negative for the virus. The nurse was known to have contracted Ebola while treating the 2 infected patients in Madrid. Welcome news in the U.S. as well, as nearly 50 people who had contact with the first Ebola patient in Dallas have almost completed a 3-week watch period with no sign any of them has contracted the virus. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
China's Communist Party kicks off its 4th plenum under the leadership of Xi Jinping today. And for a closer look at this and other global headlines, we're joined by our Eunice Kim following the developments for us.
Eunice, we're hearing that rule of law will be the centerpiece of this summit.
That's right, Mark. The buzz phrase going into this key policy-setting gathering is exactly that, the rule of law. So China watchers will be looking for judicial reforms as well as other changes that will direct Chinese society in the coming years. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
This is the 4th plenum since Chinese President Xi Jinping took office. Elite members of the Chinese Communist Party begin a 4-day policy-setting meeting in Beijing on Monday, seeking to establish a platform for judicial and other reforms. Unlike previous meetings where the items on the agenda centered on issues related to the country's economy, this will be the first time that the party will focus on the rule of law. This is key to realizing Beijing's goal of promoting the modernization of China's governing system and capabilities. It is also expected to institutionalize Xi Jinping's long drive to tackle corruption by introducing a new anti-corruption office. The fate of former National Security Chief Zhou Yongkang, the first member of the party's Politburo Standing Committee to be detained for corruption, will also be a key development to watch during the meeting. There is speculation the leadership will make an example of him to show its determination to implement the rule of law. All eyes are also on what kind of measures the plenum will come up with to deal with the ongoing unrest in Hong Kong.
The protests may be drawn out for a long time and turn more bloody, so the Chinese government needs to figure out some countermeasures.
Other items to be discussed during the plenum include economic reforms such as provincial government's debt and rural land trade regulation. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And as top Chinese officials gather for that party plenum in Hong Kong, pro-democracy protests are showing few signs of losing momentum as demonstrations enter its 23rd day today. Over the weekend, the standoff between police and protesters had turned violent in Mong Kok after demonstrators retook parts of that district. Police used pepper spray and batons to control the crowds. At least 20 people were reported injured, including police officers. A 23-year-old man was also arrested on Saturday following an online post that encouraged others to join in, quote, the unlawful assembly in Mong Kok, according to a police report. Ahead of talks between protest leaders calling for universal suffrage and Hong Kong government officials on Tuesday, Chief Executive CY Leung said external forces were propping up the sit-ins, a charge that activists have since denied. And we'll wrap with an update on the war front on the Syrian and Turkish border. Kurdish forces are reportedly making gains on the strategic city of Kobani as a U.S. assault took down Islamic State militants from the air. Local residents said the airstrikes stopped the jihadists in their tracks, of which U.S. Central Command said there were at least 11 airstrikes launched on Saturday and Sunday. UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said some 70 IS fighters were killed over the weekend.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Korea's producer prices plunged to a 10-month low in September due to falling global raw material prices, mainly oil prices. The Bank of Korea said Monday its producer price index dropped 0.4% on-year last month. Coal and petroleum prices, which have been weakening since April, led the decline, tumbling slightly over 2% on-month in September. The calls for deregulation are getting louder. New data shows the main industry that have kept the Korean economy moving and growing are starting to lose their competitive edge. Sales are slowing and operating profits are slipping, raising questions of where Korea should go from here. Kim Ji-hyun has the details.
The pillars of the Korean economy includes mobile phones, shipbuilding, and automobiles, but their dominance within the hierarchy appears to be shifting as the rates of increase in sales and operating profits are on a sharp decline. The Federation of Korean Industries, in a survey of 176 local companies, found that the rate of increase in sales among smartphone companies recorded a more than a 9% drop in the first half of this year. That represents a steep decline from the 30% increase recorded last year and a 70% spike seen in 2012. The shipbuilding industry finds itself in a similar position. The sales performance in shipbuilding rose just 0.9% in the first half, down from a 2% increase in sales growth recorded in 2012. Some like Hyundai Heavy Industries and Samsung Heavy Industries even recorded operating losses in the first 6 months of the year. Of the three so-called pillars, the auto sector appears to be faring the best, but sales are starting to sputter. The rate of increase in sales came to 1.5% in the first half of this year, falling from a 10.5% increase in 2012. The Federation of Korean Industries believes it's mainly due to the prolonged period of low growth in the global economy, which in turn has had an effect on the export-driven Korean economy. Also, the industries are being affected by the rising price competitiveness of rival companies in Japan and China that have been buoyed by government-led expansionary policies. In response, Vice Chairman of the Federation of Korean Industries, Lee Seung-chul, has called for more deregulatory moves in the industrial sector to improve conditions for local companies. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade is calling on the National Assembly to waste no time ratifying the country's free trade agreement with Australia, signalling it would like the deal approved by the end of the year, if possible. The office says a swift ratification would give Korean exporters a head start over their Japanese rivals in the lucrative Australian market. The government is concerned that Korean exporters will lose precious ground to Japan if Japan's FTA with Australia takes effect first. Korea and Australia signed their FTA back in April, and the Korean government submitted it to the National Assembly for approval last month. Australia has been asking Korea to speed up the process, as it has already completed all the necessary parliamentary procedures. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg made a two-day trip to Korea last week for talks with Samsung officials, and this week he's been talking about what he saw. A photo posted on his very own Facebook page shows Zuckerberg and his management team in suits, very protective suits, as you can see there, at Samsung Electronics' computer chip plant in Hwasong. Zuckerberg called the chip-making process inspiring and mentioned that 40% of the entire world's memory chips are made at that very plant. He thanked Samsung for hosting his team and said he looks forward to, quote, working together to connect the world. Industry watchers say the two tech giants might be working on a plan to produce Facebook smartphones and wearable virtual reality devices. Now, for this week's Industry Insight, we are going to take a look at the market for supercars here in Korea.
Right. They may cost a small fortune to buy, but sales are skyrocketing. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports on the reasons behind the boom.
Three seconds is all it takes for a supercar like this to go from 0 to 100 in an hour. But it's taken a bit longer for these marvels of engineering to take Korea's ultra-high-end market by storm.
They're not something you'll see every day, but these so-called supercars, Lamborghinis, McLarens, and Ferraris, are no longer a rare sight on the streets of Seoul, especially in the capital's flashy Gangnam district.
Since super and ultra high-end cars started coming into the Korean market in 1987, more than 1 million have sold here. It took 20 years to sell the first 300,000, but some 600,000 have been sold in the past 7 years. These days, Korean consumers are placing greater emphasis on uniqueness and scarcity when selecting their vehicles.
Their owners are often in the richest 0.1% of Korean society, and it's not hard to see why, as a supercar often costs more than a typical house, running into the millions. So who exactly are buying these cars?
The higher Korean won helps sales, but supercar buyers don't really feel the effects of the sluggish economy. Also, Koreans have a strong taste for luxury goods, and supercars are just a different means of showing off your wealth.
Ultra-high-end auto brands report jumps in sales across the board in Korea. Some talk about a decent 20 to 30% rise, while others, like Maserati, are seeing their sales go through the roof. The Italian automaker sold 280 units in the first half of this year, double what it sold the whole of last year. The increase will be more than triple for all of this year. Brands like Ferrari just can't supply models fast enough to meet demand.
Ferrari owners are not that young. They're generally middle-aged men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who have strong personalities and enjoy specialized cultural activities. To meet their needs, we host numerous events that match their interests and make the most of sports-related marketing, such as Formula One.
Ferrari and Lamborghini will have to stay on their toes, though, as more rivals enter the Korean market. Britain's Aston Martin, famous for its models that have featured in James Bond movies, recently opened a showroom in Seoul. McLaren, whose models are said to be priced at some $500,000, started to take orders last month, with luxury car makers identifying Korea as a key market for growth. Many drivers here will increasingly see their cars bypassed by the likes of Lamborghinis and McLarens. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And in other news, 2 Korean tourists are missing after the boat they were traveling on crashed into a large fishing vessel off Thailand's western coast. Local police say the tourist speedboat was carrying a total of 42 people, including 34 tourists and 3 crew members from Phi Phi Island to Phuket. Marine police were able to rescue 27 of those on board the tourist boat, while villagers on boats retrieved 8 others. An official from the Korean embassy in Thailand identified the missing as a 31-year-old man with a family name Ko and a 28-year-old woman with the surname An. Police say bad weather conditions could have likely caused the collision, and they are questioning the speedboat's crew and the fishing boat's captain for further details.
Now, it was the closest planetary approach by a comet in human history. Siding Spring, as it's called, whizzed past Mars early Monday morning Korea time, and in doing so may have unlocked some mysteries about the red planet and also the origins of our solar system. Our Connie Kim reports.
It's being called a once-in-a-million space event. Hurtling at 56 kilometers per second, the mountain-sized Siding Spring comet made its closest encounter to Mars at 3:27 a.m. Monday, Korea time. It traveled as close as 140,000 kilometers to the red planet, or just about 1/3 the distance between the Earth and Moon. To prevent possible damage to its Mars orbiters, NASA moved them to the other side of the planet.
It takes a half a millimeter sized particle traveling at 56 kilometers per second to injure one of these spacecraft.
But satellites in the area will be studying the comet, including its gas and dust shroud and the material that trails behind it. Using that data, scientists hope to gain a better understanding of Mars, including more about the planet's weather patterns and its atmosphere. And as the icy comet is believed to be the frozen remnants from the formation of the solar system, scientists also hope they'll get a peek 4.5 billion years into the past at the origins of the solar system. It's taken Siding Spring 1 million years to make its way to Mars, truly making this a unique opportunity for science. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Well, it's a rainy day here in Korea, although we are seeing fewer rain clouds than earlier this morning. But this round of autumn rain is expected to continue all day long, and it is forecast to carry on into tomorrow as well. Between 10 and 60 millimeters of precipitation will fall here in the upper regions, though most of the rain has let up in Seoul and the surrounding areas for the day, while up to 120 millimeters are in store for some parts. And afternoon highs will be about 3 to 6 degrees lower than yesterday, so let's take a closer look. Now, the daytime high in the capital will reach 17, while Daegu and Gwangju will top out at 20 and 21. Now, for other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will peak at 24 and 18 respectively, and Dokdo peaks at 19 this afternoon. So tomorrow is going to be another rainy day, but we'll have our beautiful autumn weather back on Wednesday with much cooler morning lows. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that wraps up our Monday edition of Newsline at noon.
Yeah, Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Tuesday. Until then, goodbye.